Is that Luke with a question there?
It is. Hi.
Hi, welcome.
One of the questions I have is on your last point around spending time doing this regularly, inquiring regularly. Um, Obviously, everyone has busy schedules. How did you navigate saying no to other things in order to prioritize your practice?
Thank you, Luke. Thank you. Whereabouts are you calling from, by the way? I don't think we've met before, have we?
The first time I'm in Balham, London.
Balham, yes. Yeah, well, welcome. Great to have you here with us. Well, it's different for everyone. I'm happy to share with you from me. I'm happy to share with you what happened to me and what it was like for me. For me, for most of my journey, I wasn't able to. Sometimes my practice was like on paper really good. You know, if someone asked me what was your spiritual practice, which no one ever did, by the way, and I was to tell them, there were sporadic points in my journey where I could tell them, oh, I'm doing lots of yoga and meditating and doing this and doing that, and it would look really good. But for Tom, most of the journey wasn't like that, really. If I gave someone a timetable of my spiritual practice, it would be very haphazard and all over the place. And there might be months where I'm doing a lot of reading, and then months where I'm just not interested in spirituality, or it'll be on the back burner. It'll be there. It was always there, but sometimes it wasn't the focus of my life, and sometimes it was. Sometimes there was an intense focus, and sometimes there wasn't. It's always there, though. But then, for me, I fell in love. I fell in love with Bhagwan Ramana, whatever that means. I fell in love with him. This was my feeling. My feeling was I started to fall in love with him. Now, when you're in love with someone, you gladly give up things to be with them. And it doesn't feel like you're giving anything up. And that's what it was like for me. It didn't feel like I was giving anything up at all. It's where I wanted to be. I wanted to be with him. I wanted to be with him. I wanted to adore him. I wanted to inwardly praise him, be with him, and surrender to him, submit to him. I didn't even have these words, surrender, submit. I just wanted to love him. And I didn't even have the words love. It was just opening of my heart and falling into silent, blissful being. It was totally non-verbal for me. In fact, I find it difficult to even remember those times. Maybe because the mind wasn't really working and thinking. It's like it felt timeless. That's what happened to me. It was very easy, actually, once that falling in love started. Before that, it seemed almost futile. I'd have flurries of spiritual practice, spiritual activity, and then frustration and suffering, or just not being interested in spirituality. And I was seeking for a good while. For many, many years, on and off. But I said there was always a current in the background. I guess it's a bit like the cliche of when a man falls in love with a woman and then none of his friends have heard from him, and he stops playing, I don't know, football with his friends and stops going out, oh, he's got a girlfriend, that kind of cliche. So it was a bit like that, but and in that, using that metaphor, it just doesn't feel like giving up. Doesn't feel like giving up anything. And when you love something, when you love to do something, when you love to be with someone, when you love to be somewhere, it doesn't feel, you are giving lots of stuff up. And this is what the spiritual journey is really. It's about falling in love with yourself, falling in love with Bhagavan, falling in love with God. And then you do give everything else up. But it's not a sacrifice in the sense of it being difficult, or, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to sacrifice this. Oh, I'm giving this up. There's no sense of resentment. It's a joy because you're not thinking about what you're leaving behind. You know, the guy who's got a new girlfriend and has fallen in love or fallen in lust with this girl, for example, you know, he's not thinking about what he's giving up. He's thinking what he's getting. You know, in the same way, the analogy isn't quite right because falling in love with God is so wholesome, whereas falling in lust with a man or a woman or a boy or a girl may not be so wholesome, you know, or so healthy. It may be, by the way, but it, you know, may not be. This just felt so right. I often say that there was a part of me that seemed to sort of step back and go, Tom, what are you doing? How can you fall in love with someone who's dead, someone who, a man you never met before? How do you know what you're doing? You know, how do you know this is even Ramana? What is this? This could be a delusion. What's happening to you? This is crazy. There was a part of me that had these thoughts. But what's interesting to me, at least, and was surprising to me, is that was such a small part. I had the thoughts. I knew somehow, I knew, and don't ask me how I knew this, because I never had this kind of conviction before. I knew this was right. It felt so right. There was no doubt, really. These doubts were in the mind, but I knew they weren't right. I knew, I had no doubt, really, because I was in love at that point. I had no choice. I had no choice. Now, that might be, I don't know, that might be helpful. It might be very unhelpful. I don't know. What's that? What's it like hearing that answer, Lou, for you?
Yeah, I think that's helpful. I mean, one example for me is perhaps seeing friends less because you go out and see friends and you feel terrible the next day. And so your practice is a lot worse. And I think that for me, as my practice has got more intense or I've done more of it, then saying no or seeing friends for less time hasn't felt painful because you enjoy the practice. But there's still other things which you probably, or I hang on to more because the practice isn't sort of like I'm not in love with it like perhaps you were at that part of your life. But I think it is growing, but it's still difficult to let go of some things because it's not like a entire love.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. That's exactly the way it is for most people, by the way. Yes. And if we focus on what we have to let go of, which is sometimes the best part, you know, the good thing to do, it's sometimes good to focus on what you have to let go of. But if you look at Bhagavan's teachings, he doesn't focus on that for the most part. Occasionally he will say, yes, you know, you should not do these things. But usually he's not saying what you shouldn't do. He's saying, be with the self. Because once you do fall in love with the self, then you naturally let go of everything else. And Bhagavan knows this. So you focus more on what you are, which is love. See, the love I have for Ramana dissolved into itself. And then all that's left is that love for Ramana, which is myself. So yes, there is a time and a place in the spiritual teaching for focusing on what you should give up and let go of. But if you're able to, it's much better most of the time to focus on what you want, you know, your heart's desire, which is actually to be with God, to be dissolved in him, to be consumed by him. This is what people may not use that language, of course, but this is what we secretly, knowingly or unconsciously want, consciously or unconsciously want, knowingly or unknowingly want. This is what we desire. We desire the death of our self and the total immersion in his being. Again, people may or may not use that language.